Hey guys, Tiger Trot 23 here. Hope you had a good record store day last month. I found a lot of cool stuff in the past month and a couple things I got at some stores on record store day too that I'd like to share with you. So here's the first reissue that I've got online. It's by a band called Wire. They are a UK punk band, and they call it post-punk too, because even in '77 they were doing stuff that was pretty ahead of their time. I'm listening to it right now actually, and it's very experimental sort of stuff. Their classic album that you might want to check out, it's called Pink Flag. It's been pretty hard to find because it was rare when it even first came out. I think there's a US pressing, but I've seen a lot of UK imports too. But if you were looking for a reissue, the only one available for the past 10 years was on this label called Four Men with Beards, which is not really known for their quality mastering or pressings. But thankfully they're going to come out with a official band licensed reissue, which you can pre-order from their website, pinkflag.com. Their first 3 classic albums are going to be reissued, and I think it's coming out next month. Very cool, sort of almost power trio type of punk, with super interesting rhythms, and they're very good musicians too. This album is a double live album from '79 and '80. It was originally released in I think 1981 after the band had broken up, and the sound quality is surprisingly good. Speaking of power trios, here's another reissue I got by a band called Guru Guru. It's like a krautrock sort of thing, not so much in the style of the electronic groups, but more a psychedelic acid rock power trio, very Hendrix inspired. It's a nice gatefold pressing, and has a pretty good vinyl quality too on the Ore label. It sounded really good, and if you like that sort of heavy acid rock power trio thing, you might want to check out one of my projects too. It's called Auto Kanya, and I'll put a link in the description. We just put up some videos from one of our recent shows, and we also collaborated with my friend Dovidas, who makes some cool YouTube videos about his life as a musician and guitar player here in Florida. Here's another record I picked up as a reissue. It's called Johnny Thunders and the Heartbreakers, LAMF, which is a famous New York City street gang graffiti tag from the '70s. This one's a punk sort of thing too. Johnny Thunders, famously from the seminal proto-punk band New York Dolls. This is what he did after that, and it's got some really cool stuff. Pretty Ramones sort of sound. This reissue is actually different than the original pressing. It's the lost 1977 mixes, which my friend has told me are some of the higher quality sounds that this album had. The highest quality you can get, I heard, is from the cassette tape pressing, but I haven't been able to find one of those. And one more reissue that I got. It's kind of controversial, but it's this Gong box set, the Radio Gnome Invisible trilogy. It's a box set reissue of their 3 mid-'70s albums, where they did sort of a concept album with this pretty convoluted story. And all the albums originally came with inserts, and this box set has a very nice reproductions of all of the artwork, and even an additional booklet with a lot of great information and pictures. That being said, the controversy is coming from the vinyl music and also the copyrights. It sounds fine to me. I compared it with my original pressings, and I couldn't really tell too much of a difference, but the band Gong themselves and their surviving band members, after the band leader David Allen passed away a few years ago, and this reissue came out dedicated to him, the original band members put out a statement that said they don't approve of this release, and they don't have any royalties coming in from this. So the controversy comes from that, and the fact that the band claims that the claim that this label makes, BYG Actuel, the French label, that this is sourced from the original analog master tapes. The band says that that's impossible because they have the original master tapes. So I don't know for sure, but it was only $50 for 3 classic albums. And if you like sort of psychedelic, prog rock sort of stuff, this is a pretty interesting and exciting band that has a lot of cool improvisation and talented musicians and percussionists. David Allen, the band leader, he was originally the guitar player in Soft Machine, that 60s Canterbury scene band, and they were on tour in the early part of the late 60s, I think 1967, and David Allen got stuck in France. He didn't have his passport stuff together, so he couldn't return to the UK with the rest of the band members. So Soft Machine carried on as a trio with Robert Wyatt and Kevin Ayers and Mike Ratledge, and they eventually replaced Kevin Ayers after he went solo with Hugh Hopper, and Robert Wyatt had a great solo career too. But David Allen, the guitar player, he stayed in France and formed this band, Gong, with his wife, and they had a pretty long career, still making music up until he died a few years ago. Anyway, I also found this record at a record store on Record Store Day. It's a used album. It was only $2, and it's one of those Taiwanese pressings of classic rock album, Metal, Pink Floyd. Sound quality isn't great, and it's not a gatefold, but it's interesting how they kind of combined the gatefold artwork with the original album cover to make a unique album cover, and pretty cool font up here too. I also picked this one up for $1. It's Spike Jonze. He's one of those super innovative band leaders from the big band era, kind of reminiscent of what Frank Zappa would do later in the 60s, and happens to be on his label too, Verve Records. This album is, as you can see by the title and album artwork, kind of a satirical take on some of the popular sounds that were going on, and also some of the advertising that record companies were doing to promote their systems. And another funny thing that happened, a friend of mine alerted me to some records that were in the dumpster, so we went to go look and found a couple cool things. A lot of easy listening and big band, but some good jazz too. This is a Chico Hamilton record. He's a jazz drummer and band leader who had a lot of great sessions. He kind of started the careers of some pretty good guitar players too that passed through his band, like Hungarian guitarist Gabor Szabo and Larry Coryell. A lot of good players played with him. And this is one of his earlier albums on the Warner Brothers label called With Strings Attached. It has a funny album cover with some marionettes on it. And this album is famous for having a young Eric Dolphy, one of my favorite saxophone players, and he makes an appearance on this. It's one of his earliest recordings. So we found this, and if you like jazz drumming, it's always good to check out Chico Hamilton albums. I know Pink Floyd's Nick Mason is pretty inspired by his mallet work. And finally, this is just one more interesting thing I got. Apparently this is a popular in Canada, a Canadian band called Max Webster, led by this guitar player. I thought it looked kind of funny, so I picked it out. But when I was looking at the inner sleeve, which is a fully illustrated, pretty nice artwork and lyric sheet, I noticed that there was some credits on here that mentioned some of the musicians who played on it. If you look right here, it features some of the guys from Rush. Actually, all the guys from Rush. And this was released in 1980. I listened to it. It wasn't too much like Rush, and I didn't like it that much. But it is cool and kind of a historic thing if you're a Rush completist. Anyway, those are some of the cool things I got this past month. I got this one at a record show that was happening, where some dealers from around the state came to sell their records. I stopped at the thrift stores like Goodwill, went to some garage sales too, went to some stores on Record Store Day, and bought a bunch of cool stuff online too. Anyway, check out the links that I put in the description, and let me know if you have any questions or comments, or if you found anything cool this past month too. See you next time. Thanks for watching.